Hey, and welcome to the Sit Down with Suzanne podcast. I am your girl, Suzanne, also known as Positively Suzanne. Now, remember, this podcast was created with us in mind. It is a reminder that not only are we worthy, but we deserve the best versions of ourselves. So grab a cup of tea or your beverage of choice and sit back and relax and join me on this journey.
Hey guys, it is your girl Suzanne, and let me tell you how excited I am about this episode. So I am with the one and the only Danielle Desir. So I met her, well, before COVID, like there's before COVID and after COVID. So I met her in Atlanta in 2019 at the very first She Podcast Live conference. And I knew we were going to end up being in each other's lives and all that and, do things together. But I'm so excited I finally have her on the podcast, the Sit Down with Suzanne podcast. So I can't do her justice because she has a plethora of skills and talents. And I'm just like looking up in awe and trying to keep up. So I'm going to have her introduce herself and we're going to dive right in because this episode is all about you. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute. So Danielle, welcome to the Sit Down with Suzanne podcast. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. It has been a minute, 2019. I remember meeting you and it was such a great environment for podcasters to be in. So super excited to be on the show and share some insights.
All right, wonderful. So as I mentioned, that there's many things that you do. And one of the things that you do that I actually became a part of right after was Women of Color Podcasters. So if you can just tell us a little bit about what that is, how that came about, and then we're going to dive in. So today's topic, we're really going to be talking about financial planning because as y'all know, I'm a life coach. And one of the things I am finding out is a lot of people have no financial acumen. They don't know how to save. They don't know how to budget. They don't know how to invest. And Danielle has a podcast called The Thought Card, which I listen to because there's some great tips on credit cards and budgeting and investing and things like that. So I have such a great time and it's such a valuable resource for me. So not only I'm going to share that with you, so go ahead and follow her. I listen to her on Spotify, to get all these great tips. She's going to be dropping some knowledge and sharing that today. But Danielle, tell me a little bit about Women of Color Podcasters. We call them WOC stars, but
Yes. So 2018, Spotify had a Sound Up Bootcamp opportunity where they were specifically looking to help women of color bring their ideas out in a form of a podcast. And I had applied, but honestly, I looked around at the top 100 on Apple Podcasts and I wasn't convinced that there were a lot of women of color because there were very few on the top 100 list. So I applied thinking, I got this in the bag. I'm going to win because how many of us are there really? And to my surprise, there were 18,000 applicants to that one opportunity in 2018. But even before they announced the winners, I had seen so many women talking about this Sound Up Bootcamp opportunity on Twitter, and I just could not pass up the opportunity for us to stay connected and to help see our projects come to fruition. So I had started a Facebook group. That Facebook group is no longer active, but that was the beginning of creating this safe space where women of color from all over the world. At one point, we had over 4,400 members from 75 countries who would come together, share different tips and strategies for podcasting, and be in a non-judgmental zone where you can just be yourself, ask questions, be in community, share and learn. And over the last almost 5 years now, we've grown to include a blog, a job board, multiple directories. We have a private community. We share grants and opportunities. So I credit that community to launching my own show and to also growing as a creative, a podcaster, and audio creator.
All right. That's wonderful. No, thank you for sharing that. And from that, I didn't even know that there were so many of us because I remember when I started it and, a few of the folks that I came in contact with when I started podcasting, they're like, Black folks don't do that. And I was like, holy cow. And that's how I ended up on Facebook and found She Podcast. And then when I went there were so many women of color there. Like I connected with you, so many other women. I was like, holy. Thank you. Because I was like, okay, I don't need one more space where I'm the only one. I'm not saying it's not challenging, but it's nice to have others, like you said, you can feel comfortable, judgment free. It could bounce ideas off, and then, kind of, it's nice when you have somebody that really kind of understand just the complexities we go through as Black women, because we're not all the same. So I love that. And, you mentioned it's no longer on Facebook. I know that you transitioned to a different medium where there's a paid membership. We still have that experience. So thank you for that. All right. So the reason that you're on the podcast, it's because, as I mentioned, I'm a life coach, I'm an empowerment coach. Y'all know that, and as I'm having these conversations, and this was something for me to learn, because truthfully, my parents did not teach this to me because they did not know it. So each generation does better, right? So my parents believed in like paycheck to paycheck. You work, you get paid, you pay your bills, you buy food, you take care of your kids. And they were great parents when it came to taking care of kids, but they didn't really understand, about saving or investing and building wealth and things like that. And then as I got old and I realized like this foolishness with, when you retire, like you're working till you're 80. And I don't want that for me. And I definitely don't want it for my kids. And that's how I started getting interested in, budgeting and all of that. And that's one of the really great thing about you is this is what you do. And not only do you do it, you certainly have really nice partnerships with other brands that are known for that. So let's talk a little bit about financing and budgeting. And how did you first get interested in this though?
So I first got into personal finance because it was a topic of conversation at the dinner table. So I grew up in a single family household, and my mom was very, very transparent about money. I remember really early on, probably the first bill I ever seen, I picked it up and I was like, Mom, there's so many zeros. And it actually ended up being her student loan bill, looking back at it now. But I learned how important money was at a really young age. We talked about money often. We talked about saving money often. My grandmother, I call her like the master saver of the family because she knew how to save a dollar, and she was so creative. And I definitely feel like I learned so much from her as well. But it started off with the principle of like saving money for tomorrow and being able to withstand the financial hardships that may come in life. And also growing up as a single parent household, like I saw that. I saw the hardships. I saw my mom working really hard to buy her first home and what it took to get to that point. My mom also did know a lot about investing as well. So at the age of 15, she helped me open up my first retirement account. When I was working in high school, I would actually save. I actually ended up saving like $5,000 over high school, and I put it towards like an investment account, and that money is still there to this day. So despite having a background of beginning of investing and learning how to save, I did a lot of mistakes myself. Like you learn from real world experience and through trial and error. But that started off really, really early on. I also have a passion for travel, and that's pretty much the whole reason for my platform is all about like planning and saving and affording travel and building our lifestyles. And I grew up going to Haiti every single summer where my family's from. And that was my extent of travel. But as I was getting older, I realized that I really wanted to like start exploring the world. But guess what? My finances were an issue. And I was trying to figure out, how do I pay off my student loan debt? How do I live my life? How do I travel and do all these things? So I created the Thought Card, which started off as a blog to document like how I was doing these things and how I was trying to figure it out. And I think at the core for me, it's all about having a can-do attitude and also being creative. Like similar to my grandma, like I will find a way when there is no way. And having like that persistence to see something through, even when things get hard, has been how I've been able to accomplish so much in a short amount of time.
That's fantastic. I mean, there's so much in that. Like your mom, kudos to single moms, right? And grandma, like women, like if they just give us the opportunity, we could run this world and run it right. But anyway, no, that's awesome for them, just putting that in you at such a young age. But I appreciate the fact that you share that even though you knew, you still made some mistakes, because you know what, like we're all human being, and we that didn't have it, we're making mistakes and we beat ourselves up. But as y'all know, that if you beat yourself up about something, it doesn't change it. It's about taking actionable items and actionable, whatever. It's something. It's about taking action and really saying, okay, like that's the past. Like, how am I going to go forward and do better, not only for me, but, do better for my family. So you mentioned that, you love traveling and, you had to figure that out. And then you started a blog that's evolved into this. And now, you have partnership with different entities that, are sponsors of the Thought Card. So how did that come about?
Yeah, so I've been podcasting since 2018, and I started my podcast because I really wanted to connect with my audience and also get content out there a little bit faster. To be honest, podcasting still takes a lot of time. It's not like a cheat code for speed, but I really just wanted to get myself out there and get the word, share my ideas, because I have a very, I would say, different stance to travel and personal finance than most people do. Most people just talk to you about traveling the world, and then you're wondering, well, how do I do this? Or most people talk about personal finance in a way that is like complicated and unapproachable. So I really am passionate about simplifying it, offering encouragement, sharing my own journey, which isn't always pretty. And I've been doing this since 2018. So we're approaching 4 years of this. And in 2020, I really decided that, you know what, I want to quit my job and I want to be a creative entrepreneur, but I didn't really have the income to do that. So I started being more consistent. I started being strategic. I even hired a coach to help me with podcast monetization and making sure I'm putting my best foot forward. And I really started leaning into sponsorships of the podcast last year. And I always feel like once you learn how to fish, which is why coaching is so important, I learned how to fish. Now I can go fish on my own. So I'm able to find and partner with brands that I believe in, that believe in me and the message that I have to share. And it's been really, really incredible. But it took a lot of persistence. It took coaching for me to learn the ins and outs of the game. And now I could fish. And now it's exciting to see how the podcast is growing. And I did eventually quit my job. It took about a year or two to figure it out, but I quit my job and I do this now full time.
All right. That's awesome. Congratulations. I'm really proud of you. And you know what? It reminds me of this old saying that, right? You give a man a fish, he eats for a day, but you teach him to fish, he eats for a lifetime, right? So that's really cool that you were able to be strategic and do that. But I think that's what makes you so relatable, because you are utilizing your personal experience and then things that you have done, things that you have gone through. And I think that folks, really connect with that. So kudos on stepping out of that corporate space and doing your own thing. I'm looking for you on that Fortune 500, one day. It's coming, girl. I'm going to claim it for you. It's coming. All right. So I know you talk about personal finances. So do you get this where folks are always asking you questions about it, when you're in a less formal setting, or you start talking about it and folks all right, Danielle, chill?
So I kind of am pretty quiet about it, in my real life. I think people just find out, oh, you're a podcaster, and they kind of go into the rabbit hole and dig into all the archives of I have over 100 episodes. But on a day-to-day basis, I think that people come to me a lot for travel. Okay. To how do you find the cheap flights? How do you find ways to afford a more luxurious trip versus super, low budget travel? But yeah, I would say people come to me mostly for that. I'm not really hey guys, this is, they come to me. But it's wonderful when they come to me, because it proves that I'm seen as someone who does what they want to do. Right. So if someone is coming to you, that's proof in the pudding that hey, you're doing something that is something of a value, and also people want to obtain that. So hopefully, Did I answer that question? I hope so.
It did. It did.
Okay.
No, that's so important. I'm glad. I love that folks come to you. And, you're right. You do provide a valuable service. And, they're coming to you because there's a need, right? And I think it gives you a warm feeling like, it's like, okay, like all this that I'm doing, it's hitting, it's resonating with folks. I'm not just like pushing this thing up the hill and, it's not impacting anyone. I actually want to go back to something that you said earlier in regards to podcasts. It took a lot of strategies and, hiring a coach and putting in the work. And I see so many people that I meet when I tell them my podcast and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to start a podcast or I want to start a podcast. But for them, it's like start a podcast, become Joe Rogan and get that $1 million with Spotify. It's not that easy because if it was, I'd be doing it. But,
right.
It's hard work. And even when you're committed, things happen, recording time. It's like every time you're set to record, for me, something happens. And I'm like, okay, like this is it. So it's just like, no, I appreciate you mentioning that. It just doesn't, maybe somebody's out there that's very lucky. Their first podcast was a hit and they got that deal, but podcasting is hard work and you fade. You fade sometimes, I know they were calling it pod fade. I just call it life because it's just like your wife and your mother and you're working, you're doing all these things. And then, because you want what you put out to be authentic to you and to your brand. And like you said, to bring value. And there's times when I'm like, I know I got to put an episode out, but I'm just so exhausted. I'm like, it's not going to be my best. It's not. And I'm like, I don't want to cheat myself or my audience. So I appreciate you mentioning that because folks will look at your success and things like, oh, like she's doing very well. And I mean, I know there's a lot more you have for your podcast that you want to happen, but folks got to realize like in order for something to do well, you got to put in the work. It's not just instant and automatic. All right. So when you think about personal finance and as you chat with folks, what is the number one thing you think folks should know?
I think that besides the technical aspects, I think the belief in tapping into abundance is one of the things that I think if I had seen earlier or thought earlier, it would have changed my life. And I still see that till this day with like people I talk to on a everyday basis, where when you start listening to people as they talk, you realize that there's like either some money trauma or like money disbelief or just like feeling of sometimes like you can't do what you aspire to do. And questioning the status quo has always allowed me to think outside the box and find a way when there is no way. Like wanting to go on that first trip to Paris in 2014, where I was heavily in student loan debt. And I'm like, I don't really have that much money to save. How do I make this possible when it feels helpless? Like, I feel like I can't get there. Or how do I eventually build the income to quit my job? Or build the income to actually save up for a house? These are things at the surface that feel and look so intimidating. And you're just kind of like, forget it. I'm not going to become debt free. I'm not going to be able to travel. I'm not going to be able to do this. But if you question it, like, why not? Why not me? Then you start to move different. You start to maybe listen to podcasts that will inspire you or read books or be creative or make sacrifices even to get to that point, whatever point that is for you.
No, absolutely. I understand. And honestly, I talk about generational trauma sometimes because it can manifest in so many different ways. As I said, my parents didn't really talk about money because, again, that's not how they're taught. My grandparents were farmers. And, that's like they worked and they tilled the ground and they provide food and whatever they sell goes towards expenses. And that was my parents' mentality. So we were raised a certain way. I remember the first time, like I never took 401k for a very long time. And then I was like, wait, what? 401k? I was just so shocked because I was like, nobody had spoken to me about it. And then I started and like, I was like, I missed so much. And I think about when my husband and I just started dating, talk about something you think it's insurmountable. I don't remember what happened. We were both making $8 an hour, girl. And, he was working overnight and he giving me a ride to work. And I said to him, like, I remember him leaving. I was like, oh, I can't wait till we go to like Paris one day. Cause that was the dream, right? I grew up there like Paris and I still haven't done it yet, but it's on the bucket list and it's going to happen. And I remember him saying to me, like, dead, looking in the face. And it was like, Suzanne, like, I don't want to hold you back. He was like, you have these big dreams, but I just don't see it happening. And I said, honey, listen, A, you're not holding me back. B, we're going to grow together. And I said, whatever we want is going to come true. And he looks at me like, okay, this chick is strange, but it's like he hadn't fathomed. And I said, no, we're going to have the house and the car and the kids. And, yeah, there were material things, but I was thinking like, we're going to have this. Like, we were renting this little place at the time, but like, I knew that I wanted more, but I knew that we were going to work hard. But like, sometimes we allow the fears like, well, my parents never had it. So, why should I? Am I better than my parents and things like that? Like I said, girl, there's a lot to unpack in this whole money issue. As us, as a people, like Caribbean people, we have this very challenging relationship with money. And I know for a fact, like sometimes, I'll counsel like some of my people from my country, and they feel like when you have money, spend money. So they'll be walking down the street like a Louis Vuitton store and don't own a home. And Louis ain't cheap. So I get it. You like nice things. And I all say that, but you know what? Let's start thinking about foundations, things that you can leave for your kids. But again, it took a lot of reconditioning and things like that for us to learn that. So I appreciate you mentioning that, like, financial responsibility, it doesn't come overnight, but it's something that's consistent, because you do want to one day, no matter how good you are, buy that big luxury purchase, but you got to budget and figure it out. All right. So I'm going to go and ask you a couple of things, because the top 5 things that I wanted to talk about, and I think that would be very beneficial to the audience. So let's talk about, like, the big thing for me is owning a home. Like, what advice would you give to folks about that?
Sure. So I would say when it comes to owning a home is to really figure out how much money in your budget that you can actually allocate to not only your mortgage, but to all the things that come with home ownership. I'm talking about repairs. I'm talking about renovations. I'm talking about furniture. I'm talking about taxes. I think when I first started, I was like, oh, all I have to do is cover the mortgage. And then you don't realize that there's so many hidden costs associated. So whatever number that is for you, like, nearly double it, because that could potentially be how much you have to spend. Sometimes things happen, like literally we found like a wasp nest, 2 large wasp nests in our backyard. That was a bag we had to drop. So just being prepared for the unexpected as a homeowner is so important. It goes way beyond what you think. Homeownership is not just a bill that you pay every month. It is a lot more responsibility. And another thing I would say when it comes to being a homeowner is think about how your money moves from you earning it to actually spending it on your home. What I mean by that is when I was figuring out my cadence as a homeowner, I realized that I needed to make some changes. My home needed to have its own bank account for its mortgage, so I can keep everything separate, not commingled with other different type of expenses. I started creating additional bank accounts for like the home repairs, home renovations, and like different projects I wanted to have around the house. So I'm always thinking about, how does my money move from, okay, I get a paycheck, and what needs to happen next? It's not just everything goes, at least for me, not everything goes into just one big pot. No, I have multiple pots so I can stay organized, and I could not only plan for today, but also plan for tomorrow. The last thing I'm going to say when it comes to home ownership is that oftentimes the bank will give you this crazy, ridiculous loan that you're like, this is amazing. I can just take out this huge mortgage. But I always say be very cautious about taking out the full extent of whatever the bank provides you, because oftentimes you're going to be overextended. So think about what you can afford. Also take into account all the other expenses that you don't even know will happen or may happen. So pad your expenses and think about how you want to manage your money. Will you have multiple bank accounts? Will you have, let's say, the envelope system where you actually have cash in an envelope and you pay with cash. So whatever that looks like for you, but that intentionality is so important because buying a home is a 15, 30 year, maybe lifetime commitment for a lot of us, right? So we want to make sure our investment is safe and that we are doing everything we can to make sure that, we're taking care of our responsibilities as a homeowner.
Well, thank you for that. Where were you when I was buying my home? Because I just wanted to own a home. And after I found out so much, like you mentioned, like everything was our responsibility, right? And God is good because I think only God kept me because like the first home I looked at, if I had bought that home, I would have lost it.
Same.
I would have lost it.
Yeah, same.
It's like, it was gorgeous bathrooms and it was, I thank God. I was sad, Danielle, when I didn't get it, but I'm glad I did it because I would have lost it.
And let me tell you. So that also reminds me of like, I had a realtor who was adamant about showing me properties that he knew was over my budget. So remember, your realtor is not your financial advisor. So it's your job to advocate for yourself and say, this is my budget. Please do not show me any other properties that are going to like give me FOMO. And now I'm potentially making bad decisions. So remember, your realtor is not your advisor, and you may have to course correct and let them know, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And please stay on target.
No, absolutely. Listen, so I actually recently became a mortgage loan officer because I'm passionate about like helping my people become homeowners. And like I said, I just really want to educate like folks because things I found out after, like I said, like the repairs and like we didn't buy a brand new home, like new construction home. And then like we did the inspection, but we found some things like the previous owner, it only had one owner, they put a couple of Band-Aids on some bullet wounds. So it lasted like 3 years, but 3 years down the line, there we are shelling out this big expense and it was just too late to do anything about it. So no, that's very, an accurate summary. Like quick question though, do you have any episode or anything dedicated to homeownership that you could reference, folks should go listen to, like, all your 100 episodes by heart, right?
Oh yes, I can definitely pull that up. I actually did a 2-part series recently. So actually episode 103, it shares the 5 types of mortgages to know about. Even just the mortgage level, like I learned so much. And if I would have known what I know now, I would have moved different in the mortgage space. So that's episode 103. And then episode 104, we talk about the different bank accounts, the 3 bank accounts I recommend that every homeowner should have. So those would be good places to start.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much. So you heard that 103 and 104, go ahead, the thought card on Spotify and all the other channels, because you really need to know this. I wish I knew this before I became a homeowner. I'm glad I did it. And like she said, some realtors will steer you in the wrong directions. Will always be your biggest advocate. All right. So let's talk about credit cards.
My favorite topic for travel.
Yes. Well, you were talking on one episode, I was listening to you, like, you have to earn things for credit card. Like, what's the point of having a credit card if you get nothing from it? So I took a lot from that episode. So let's talk about credit cards and just what some of the biggest mistakes folks make. And, like, what do you recommend?
Sure. So when it comes to credit cards and earning points and miles, think about your goal. Like, what's the point of you earning these points and miles? Is it potentially to pay for partially or an entire expense, a travel expense? That is one way you could look at the reason why you want to use a credit card. Or you may end up filling in some gaps. So maybe you have the budget to spend for travel, but then you're like, I want to do something maybe a little bit extra. So your points and miles can help you fill a gap. Or I've used my points and miles to actually gift travel and gift experiences to my family and friends. So there are a number of reasons and ways that you can use points and miles that you earn from credit cards. The first thing that I would think about first is potentially going with the no fee credit cards as a beginner, because you don't have to shell out an annual fee of $100, $400. There's so many. There's like big amounts out there. But I like the no fee credit cards because you will just be benefiting without having to shell out any additional cash. When it comes to credit cards, also, there are a variety of perks that come with different credit cards. So they may have like 2 points for per mile or 2 points or 5 points per different category spend. Now, to make it super simple, I just recommend looking at your budget and what do you typically spend money on. So I spend money on restaurants. I spend money on, let's say, gas, right? So those are my, and groceries also. So groceries, gas, and restaurants are my top expenses. So when I'm looking for credit cards, I'm looking for credit cards that offer me above and beyond for those categories. So we're talking about 2 points per mile, 5 points per mile, maybe 10 points per mile on those categories. So it becomes a lot simpler. Look at what you're spending money on and find a credit card that matches that and that offers you the most points and miles. The last thing I'll say for that is to also keep track of what the perks are for each credit card. So some credit cards will offer you, let's say, additional points and miles for different categories. And if you have multiple credit cards, it could be confusing to keep all this in your head. Like, wait, which credit? I have like over 10 credit cards at this point. So I get confused. So what I do is I just have a notes on my app phone that just list out the different categories. So I know which card to use when I'm swiping so that I can always know that I'm making the right decision and using the right card versus being confused and kind of leaving money on the table. So those are my top tips. So one, figuring out your top categories for your spending, find a credit card that matches that, preferably no fee to start off, so you don't have to shell out any money. And then using the right credit card when you are out spending money so that you can maximize your earning potential. Once you have all these points and miles, use it. Where are you going to go? How are you going to use those funds? Because unlike savings, your points and miles actually devalue over time. So you want to make sure you're earning them and then you're burning them because you want to use them and go off on those travel experiences you work hard for.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. So I could chat with you all day, but I do know that, we do have a time limit, right? So I'm going to ask this question because you did a really lovely series on investing. So I'm going to have you recommend the episode and then just give your top tip about investing.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I think I was on mute for some reason. Okay,
yes,
good.
I lost you a little bit.
No, it's okay.
Right,
it's okay.
Go on.
Okay. So I did a 4-part series on the Thought Card podcast where we tackled investing. And I really wanted to take listeners through the journey of things to consider as you become an investor. So we made the case for investing in episode 96 of like why investing in the stock market is important and how it can actually improve your financial outlook. So unfortunately, we can't save to building wealth. It's just literally the math doesn't math up. So in order for you to build wealth and like build exponential wealth and have your money work for you, you have to invest. And there's a number of ways you can invest, but in particular, we talked about the stock market. 96, we kind of made the case for that. And then once you're like, okay, I think about investing. I want to be an investor. I think it's also important to think about, okay, am I a short-term investor or am I a long-term investor? Am I looking at something for retirement 30, 40 years down the road? Or do I need to make some quicker cash that's going to pay off like within the next year? So I lean more towards long-term investing and I can set my expectations for the long haul. And I'm not necessarily going to be more stressed out with things like a recession or like other things that may pop up over the tenure. And then the last 2 episodes, we kind of got into the nitty gritty where we talked about like the research tools and some tips about finding good companies. These are all very helpful. So episode 96 to 99 will break things down for you. But I think when it comes to investing, I think what's most important is understanding yourself as an investor. Like, am I really focused on short term right now? Or am I focusing on long term? Because that will set the pace and that will set your expectations. So as a long term investor, the market is like down for me 20%. but I'm not freaking out because I know that I'm really investing in these companies for 20, 30 years from now. So the market will rebound versus someone who is looking at short term, they may be freaking out because they're realizing that we are heading to, recessionary times. So I think understanding that will help you figure out what the best course of action, what the best path is going to be for you.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So next question, how do you create a budget and then travel on a budget?
Ooh, these are great questions. Great questions. So I like to use a zero-based budgeting methodology where everything you earn for the month has a place, has a dollar. So at the end of the month, you're zero. So let's say you earn $2,000 for the month. That means every single dollar you earn, that $2,000 will have a place at the end. And at the end, it will be zero. So that to me is very helpful because it's easy math. And just think every dollar has to either be spent on bills. Maybe you're going to invest some, you're going to save some, maybe give some to charity, like whatever it is, every dollar needs a job. And that to me has been very, very simple to think about. The other thing that I also recommend when it comes to budgeting is for your top bills, like we talked about my mortgage, I have its own dedicated bank account just for simplicity to keep things separate. So things like large bills and also goals and like life goals I have will have its own dedicated bank account. So a travel fund, I have an account just for travel to keep it separate. That's a goal. But I also have an account for my mortgage, which is an important bill that I do not want to mess with. I want to make sure it's all there. So having a budget, making sure everything has a job, and then start allocating them to different bank accounts is very important. Another thing, this is a lot easier, I think, as when you have 9 to 5. I'm an entrepreneur now, so things definitely feel different. But when I did have a 9 to 5 job, I also automated my paychecks where everything would be sent to specific accounts. So I would not have to think about what does what, where it goes. No, everything was just automated. And again, that helped me to streamline and have the funds available when I needed it. When it comes to budgeting for travel and affording travel, I like to think of travel like a bill. A lot of times people think of travel as like a luxury or as an item of like something that it's like off to the side. But if you start to incorporate travel in your monthly budget, like everything else, like your Netflix, your coffee dates and your restaurants and all of that, your gym membership, now it starts becoming part of your lifestyle. And even though we're not traveling every month, we are still saving for it so that when a flight deal or an opportunity comes, you have the funds to start off with and you have the funds to go to. So those are my big tips. But like I mentioned, travel for me is a lifestyle, right? Like I'm a pescatarian, so I don't eat meat, right? I'm a traveler and travel is part of my budget every single month. And that in itself helps you to travel more.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll say this. The one thing I have found is like when I plan for travel, I do better. It's more affordable versus then when I like just last minute and then it's like throw something together. So you're right. Making that a part of your budget, if you love to travel, which I do, is important. All right. So I'm going to do some rapid fire questions. So guys, if you want to find out more, you're going to have to follow the thought card. So rapid fire questions, you're going to answer. I know we like to, you go into details, but okay. So how do you save if you're not making enough?
I would say consider earning more, and also really taking a look at your budget to see, is there anything that you can cut down? Right now, we're almost in a recession. So thinking about, okay, how do I spend less and potentially earn more?
All right. How do you go about choosing a savings account?
Whichever one offers the most interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cars, buy or lease?
I'm really into leasing now. That's probably not the best advice, but I like having a new whip every 3 years. So I'm team lease currently.
Okay. All right. Should you get renter's insurance if you're renting?
I've never rented, so I don't think I'm qualified. Yeah.
All right, girl. I like that. All right. Should you get travel insurance if you're traveling?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. What are some of the biggest mistakes folks make with finance?
I think not not knowing their numbers. So being afraid of opening the bank account app and looking to see how much money you actually have in there is like one of those things that's scary, but definitely has to be done. Knowing your numbers is very important. And from there, you can make more informed decisions.
All right. What would you say is your biggest flex as a financial savvy entrepreneur?
Ooh, I would say being able to fully fund my maternity leave for 3 months. Like that's a big flex.
Nice. Nice. I love it. I mean, and you mention it, but how often do you set financial goals for yourself?
I would say once a year before like the new year, I do a big goal setting, but then I reset, like depending on how things are going, maybe in the halfway point. Like right now in July is a good time, July, August, a good time to reset. Like, is this really relevant? I'll question things at this point.
All right, cool. So you said it early in one of the questions I asked about like, listen, saving for retirement, it just doesn't add up. It really is about investment. So would you say that the biggest strategy for retirement, what is the biggest strategy for retirement?
Yeah, I would say investing is so important to building wealth and building exponential wealth where you can eventually retire comfortably. So investing for sure.
All right, perfect. All right. Sadly, we are coming to the end. I learned so much. I'm listening and I'm like going to go back to those episodes that you mentioned to listen to. So I actually want to end on a very, very nice note in terms of babies. But just to wrap everything up, wrap up your thoughts and things like that, advice for the listeners, that are kind of struggling with creating their own financial plans, things like that. What advice would you give to them?
Yes, I would say that one way to improve your finances is to just be surrounded by people who are talking about personal finances. And my favorite way is listening to podcasts. So spend time dedicated to like listening to podcasts, even if you're not taking action, just listening to some advice and listening to how people think about money and how they move through their financial journey, I think is a great way to get inspiration and to set goals for yourself of what you want to actually do. Another thing I would say also when it comes to goal setting is it's okay to have smaller goals too. Like we have big goals of like buying a house and going on these huge lavish vacations, but a smaller goal can be something like, hey, I just want to save $500 in my emergency fund just so I could like weather the storms. These are all great things to put in place and then celebrate your wins. Like take the time, celebrate all the little milestones that you get along the way, because that will keep you motivated for next time.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, folks. So you heard it. Miss Danielle Desir, the financial savvy podcaster. Such a wealth of information from her. And please go ahead and listen to the thought card because I've learned a lot from it. And I know that you'll learn a lot from it. So we are going to end on this note. Miss Danielle, so you're a newlywed. Yeah, it seems like you've been married forever, but you're a newlywed and a new mom. So 2 questions. What's that like? And becoming a new entrepreneur also. So you have a lot of newness going on. What is that like? And when are you planning to start teaching the baby about finance?
Yeah. So motherhood has just been so amazing. It's a beautiful journey. Not always easy, but it's been so beautiful. And we're teaching baby K about finances, even though he doesn't really understand what's going on. We actually opened up an investment account for him and we've been putting some money there. You also get some funds from like when you're on your maternity leave and also your registry, like, your baby fund, and people give you gifts. So some of those monies were like, okay, let's just invest that. So hopefully when he's 18, 21, he has a nice little nest egg to go off and pursue his dreams, things that maybe we didn't even get a chance to do.
No, that's awesome. You know what? And I'll add one more thing. There's a young lady that I know. I mean, they came from money. She comes from money. But one of the things, like, we went out to dinner and she was talking. So like they paid off the kid's student loan. Kid had no student loan. Paid off their wedding and actually gave them a significant down payment on a home. Honestly, I think they almost paid off all of it. I think they left like a little just, so have like a monthly expense. And, I remember listening and I said, that is amazing. And that is something I would love to start my kid off without, because a lot of kids start off with $100,000 or more in debt, right? That is awful, like just awful. And I was like, you know what? That is a goal for me. It really is, to not let my child start off with, I might not be able to do everything they did, but start off with that massive debt. So, but that's fantastic. You're already teaching baby K about finances.
Yes. Because imagine, like, instead of digging yourself out of a hole, now you're building on top of a foundation. Like, that's a beautiful gift to have. So I'm right there with you, trying to figuring out how we're gonna do this. Absolutely.
All right. Well, Danielle, it was a pleasure to have you on the Sit Down with Suzanne podcast. I really appreciate it. Like I mentioned, I learned so much. I know the audience found value in it. I know they have a new favorite podcast, The Thought Card, to listen to. And again, I am so humbled that you chose to come on this, because I know you've been on quite a bit of podcasts and some fancy ones. So thank you to come into the Sit Down with Suzanne podcast. I love it. So I'll have you say your final goodbyes, and then I'll say goodbye, and then we'll wrap up.
Yes. Thank you so much, Suzanne. This was a wonderful conversation. Follow me over at thoughtcard.com, my podcast, The Thought Card Podcast. Follow me on Twitter at The Thought Card, or on Instagram at the Danielle Desir. And let me know what your takeaways were from this episode. Love to connect with you.
All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I believe when women connect and collaborate, they could take over the world. So thank you so much. And until next time, this is Suzanne saying ta-ta. As always, guys, this is Suzanne saying thank you. I am saying I am humbled by your continued support. I am humbled by you continuing to tune in every time there's a new episode. I appreciate it, because I know that there's a lot of podcasts out there for you to choose from, so that you continue to choose mine and listen to it. I appreciate it. So a couple of things. Want to keep reminding you guys that the Sit Down with Suzanne podcast is available. It is on my website at www.positivelysuzanne.com. It's also available in all the major podcasting directories. It's on Apple Music, it's on Amazon, it's on iHeart, it's on Google Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, and a plethora of others. So wherever you get your podcasts, I guarantee you the Sit Down with Suzanne podcast is on it. So I need you to do a couple of things for me. I need you to listen to the episode. I need you to subscribe. I need you to share the episode. I need you to write a review and spread the word that the Sit Down with Suzanne podcast is out there. It's happening, and it's fun and fabulous. So I want you to share it, because we're trying to help more people. So again, please go ahead and share, write a review. If you want to reach out to me, you can connect with me at Suzanne@positivelysuzanne.com. You could also follow me on social media. Instagram is my main jam. So go ahead and follow me on Instagram. I am just so appreciative of everything you do. Also, buy me a coffee should be right at the bottom of the episode. So you can go ahead and buy me a coffee. Just remember that every coffee that you buy goes towards purchasing equipment to upgrade the show, so I could be bigger and better for you all. All right. So as always, I am so appreciative of you guys. And until next time, this is Suzanne signing off.